Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. And tonight we are excited because we're joined by retired Navy SEAL Chief Eddie Gallagher and his wife, Andrea, who are coming out with a new book. Stay tuned for that. It's called The Man in the Arena, and it tells all about their story. Now, Eddie and Andrea, welcome to The Right View. We're really excited to have you guys. And I want to give you an opportunity, first and foremost. I think people have heard the name Eddie Gallagher. Andrea, they probably heard of you too, because you were so outspoken and such a force for your husband. But for people that might not know, maybe give us a brief summary of your story and what you guys went through.
Yeah, sure. So I was in the military for 20 years. 5 of those served with the Marine Corps as a medic, and then the rest with the SEAL teams. I was coming up at the end of my career. I did a deployment to Iraq, Mosul, Iraq in 2017. Came back from that deployment, and about 6 to 7 months later, I was informed I was being charged with war crimes, but was not told what those crimes were, what the specifications were. My family, or Andrea and I, both sort of had faith that common sense would take over. That somebody would investigate these rumors that were going around. That never happened. They ended up raiding my house. NCIS ended up raiding my house, pulling my 2 children out at gunpoint while my wife and I were not home. And then shortly after that, they came and arrested me at a TBI clinic where I was getting checked up for getting ready to retire. Came in there, handcuffed me, and then threw me in military prison without any charges or being told what I was being charged with. And as soon as they did that, that's when Andrea, who I had already moved out to Florida, she stood up and started a organic roots or grassroots campaign on Instagram, sort of letting everybody know what was going on, because the military was trying to just sweep it under the rug. Once she got a bunch of followers, we got, tons of supporters, and I remained locked up for about 9 months until my trial. And then at trial, I was acquitted of all charges except one, which was taking a picture. But yeah, it was a nightmare. There's a lot more that goes into that. That was a summary. But yeah, that's what the book is going to be about.
Wow. Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for your service. It is because of incredible people like you that serve this country that we have a country like the United States. You keep us all safe. You make us able to call ourselves the greatest country in the world. And we so appreciate your service. Before we get back to the book, and Andrea, I want to get your take on a couple of these things. Eddie, I want to ask you for a second. We hear about all these woke politics kind of going into, we see these CIA recruitment videos that it really doesn't talk about, let me recruit the best people for an organization. It's really about identity politics and making sure the boxes are checked, despite what you would hear on some of these ads. How did you find the military, or do you have any concerns going forward that ideology has or would infiltrate the military? And honestly, how bad would something like choosing people not for, their skill as a soldier and their ability to defend this country, but rather for, identity politics, what would happen if we allowed that to reign?
Well, I mean, throughout the course of my career and the course of the military, it's always been used as a social experiment. A lot of things are tested out in the military, and you can see by the different administrations, especially when I was serving. So I did 8 years under the Obama administration as well, and that type of wokeness was coming through at that time. And then we saw as President Trump did his 4 years, that he had to fight against that. And of course, the people that came up through the Obama administration were all high-ranking officers, so they were fighting back. And then now we have the Biden administration, who is full force going on with the social experiment. I always say, I don't have any care of like what you do, what your personal beliefs are, but the military probably needs to stay out of that. I don't understand how these things are making us a better fighting force and allowing us to protect our country better.
Yeah, well, amen to that. We need to
Yeah.
focus on getting the best people for a job, no matter what it is, and nothing else. Andrea, I want to ask you, as you were experiencing everything that was happening to Eddie, you really, at a certain point, you didn't even know what was going on. How did you find out what had happened to him and that he was locked up in a jail cell?
Well, the first inclination I had about the depth of just how off the rails this had gone was, as Eddie indicated, we really stayed silent. We turned the other cheek. We felt like everything would get sorted out for the better part of a year, nearly. And I think when it really hit me was the home raid took place on June 20th, 2018. And when they read through and pulled me into a van, they had already taken my children out at gunpoint.
Oh my God.
There was probably 20 plus NCIS agents in full militia riot gear, assault rifles. They had barricaded our house, barricaded all the roads around us. And I just thought, how could this even happen? And how were you allowed to do this to us? And at that point, when they had taken me into the van, they questioned me about rumors I had heard. And I was just like, this seems so unreal that you're able to be here. How are you here? And that was the first time I ever heard anything relating to your husband, who is a Navy SEAL and a Navy SEAL sniper, killed ISIS. And I was like, and what?
You were like, great, that's why he was sent overseas,
Yes.
and that's what his job is.
Right. That's what he's been doing for 20 years. So again, I can't say how naive that we were. We felt like, okay, there's nothing to this. There's no way that you can make something out of nothing. So again, we went back after June to trusting the process. And Eddie, then what he indicated when he got taken from the TBI clinic, that was actually on September 11th that they came, they took him, they handcuffed him, and they threw him away in a military prison. And that's when I really started to wake up, for lack of a better word, and understand that we were fighting the full power of the United States government and what we would eventually find out, the power of the liberal media, which took our case and basically just turned it into one clickbait headline after the next. And so it was through the grassroots process with my brother-in-law, Sean, and myself that we were really able to let people know what you're hearing is not true. And what we're trying to do is set the story straight. And thank God, your father-in-law was in office. I don't think the outcome would have been the same. We're not that we have a president that gives these soldiers and members of our service the benefit of the doubt, which is what they deserve. And this was a case that was brought up so much after the fact. There was no forensic evidence. There was nothing to it. It was a case based on rumors, lies, and hearsay. So that's what the shocking thing is. He was sitting in jail that whole time. And, we had to fight for him at that point.
Eddie, what was that like for you to know that you had gone overseas? You literally, the training to become a Navy SEAL is so intense. I mean, side note, I fancy myself a bit of a G.I. Jane, and I would love at some point to be able to go through, at least attempt the SEAL training. I think it is so incredible. What our SEALs do. And so you go through all this training, you're in the military for so long, you are trained to do a job, you go overseas and you do that job, and then you find out that you're being put in prison. And by the way, when you were locked up for all of these months, at a certain time, you didn't even know why you were in there. What did it feel like? Did you really feel hopeless at a certain point? Did you know what was going on the outside? Were you being made aware of that?
So when I was initially locked up, there was definitely a lot of confusion on my end. I had no idea what was going on. And I really didn't understand the depths of how far they were willing to go to try and hang me out to dry, because that hadn't even crossed my mind that they would do that. It wasn't until I had a little hearing in prison to see if I was safe enough to be able to be let out. And that's when they used every qualification, every school that I'd been to, everything that I'd done, given my blood, sweat, and tears for, against me. They said I was too dangerous to be let out because I was a SEAL. And then they listed off every qualification that I had earned and saying that I was a danger to society and a danger to the case because I had gone to all these schools. That's when I think I felt the most betrayed.
Wow.
I would never think in a million years that this would happen, but it did. But thankfully, I had my wife and my brother who stood up and started fighting back. So while I was in there, I was getting little conversations between myself and Andrea and my brother, but of course, all the phone calls are recorded in there, so there's only so much we can say back and forth. So it was definitely it was an experience. I would see every once in a while, Andrea or my brother on the news. So I was picking up bits and pieces of that, and it really wasn't until President Trump stepped in and said let him out of prison so he could properly defend himself. And I think the big confusion is, he wasn't saying I was guilty or not guilty. He was like, just give this guy due process so he can go defend himself. And I'm telling that was huge because while I was locked up, they were denying me my lawyer visits. They were denying me my medical visits or medical appointments, denying me visitation. So it was everything. They stacked the cards against you. And if it wasn't for President Trump's involvement, I'd hate to think what the outcome would have been.
Well, I want to get to my father-in-law in a few minutes, but Andrea, I want to go back to something you were talking about, the media. Because the media, it seemed to me, at least as a person that was not directly involved with this, the media seemed to be on a mission, really, Eddie, to destroy you. Obviously, folks in our family are no strangers to that and how the media operates. But I mean, you guys were two private citizens, one of you serving in the United States military. So I guess, would you have expected to have the media against you? And really, how was it having them completely, seemingly against you when you were already dealing with so much?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I can remember vividly an experience that I had sitting in the airport watching what they were doing to Justice Kavanaugh. And I was like, this is what's happening to us. Yet it was very unknown at that point. So we really were seeing this already happening, the targeting, just the intentional nature of just ripping people to shreds. And like you said, I mean, your family is so familiar with it. And it's just a tragic situation where, again, it goes back to the injustice. If you're able to tip the scales and put your thumb on the scale of justice, deny someone legal counsel, the right to a fair trial, due process, we don't have the ability to defend him in the way that we should. And so that's what we experienced. And the media was definitely a huge part of that for us. We received death threats. We were targeted. We had all types of things that we were dealing with, in addition to all the injustice that we were facing. And so it's just tragic to see what the media has become. And I think that we faced an uphill battle, but I have to say, the blessing and the curse of when your father-in-law got involved, and rightly so, the media contorted so much about what your father did. All your father did was give him the right to defend himself. By that time, he had already been in jail since September 11th, 2018. That took place when your father said enough is enough. He should be entitled to defend himself. That was at the end of March, early April 2019. You would think that these are rights afforded to us, but unfortunately, without the right people to help and support and defend us. And by the way, just to say, we had been pounding the pavement. We had gone on to Capitol Hill. We had used the system as a democracy to say people need to cry out for justice for our service members. And they did. The American public rallied around us. We ended up getting 50 members of Congress to sign on to a letter to your father to say, this is wrong. This needs to change. All Republican congressmen, by the way, not one Democrat signed on to it. And that's what got your father's attention. We used the process that we should be afforded as citizens in the United States to do what we needed to do for Eddie. But a lot of people just think it was just, your dad stepped in and did what he did. And I think that there's a lot of context that was never really given to the general public that we're going to share and disclose about what we went through as a family, how we were terrorized, how all of these processes were really used against us to stack the deck. And yeah, there's a lot of information in there about everything that truly happened that I think is going to set the record straight finally.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you guys to finally get a chance to fully tell your story and the way it should be told. And the reality with the media stuff, it is so frustrating. And I think the thing that is most frustrating is most people will never understand. You guys, unfortunately, get it. It is all about clickbait. It is all about how can we sensationalize a story that is otherwise, not really worthy of any news to get more clicks, to get more ad traffic, to get more people driven to our site. They don't care how it impacts people's lives. They don't care if it destroys people's lives. They don't care if your children are held at gunpoint to exactly what you guys had to go through. They care about the money. They care about the clicks on their sites. It is absolutely disgraceful and disgusting. And believe me, no one knows better than our family. If I had a nickel for every lie told about me, my husband, my father-in-law, for sure. I mean, my gosh, it would just, we could pay off the national debt at this point. But you guys have talked a lot about President Trump, my father-in-law. And I have to tell you, I remember very, very specifically and vividly whenever he learned about the situation that you guys were in. I actually remember it was one night, Eric and I were at our house, and Eric, I think, heard about Eddie, about exactly what you were going through some of his friends that were SEALs. He had gotten some, information. And Andrea, you had maybe gone on TV one time, and Eddie, I got to tell you, your wife is incredible. Andrea, you were such a fighter and such a champion. I know you know this, but the way that you got out there and you fought for your husband and you fought for what was right, it is truly one of the reasons that I think you guys are sitting here together today talking to me. But I'll never forget, Eric tweeted something, and then the next day he called his dad and he was like, you need to look into this. And then obviously he got the signatures from Capitol Hill, from all the congressional members. And you're right. He wanted the right thing to happen, the process to play out. But I want to ask you guys, what was it like then to have the sitting president of the United States really come out and start talking about you, talking about your story? And obviously it was very impactful for your fight.
Yeah, well, for me, it was very surreal. So, I mean, I was locked up at the time, and I actually tell a story in my book. We had gotten a lot of promises, a lot of sort of false hope all the way up to that point where people were like, oh, they're going to let you out, and then they didn't. And then by the time the President Trump had, I got word that he might help out. I didn't put any stock into it because I had been told so many times before. But I was walking, marching to lunch one day, and one of the guards pulled me aside and said, hey, I just saw the president tweeted about you. And that was how I found out. And I really had no other information. I went back to my cell, and later on that day they came and got me, and they're like, you're out of here. I wish the persecution ended there, but just him doing that alone was huge, because then I was able to get out. I was able to talk to my lawyers. I was able to actually defend myself before trial.
Yeah. It was huge. I mean, I would say the one thing that I really appreciated was I feel like your father-in-law and your family were so empathetic, because we said we saw behind a curtain we never knew existed. And as you said, Laura, until someone knows what it's like to be put in a position where you're vilified, you're spoken of in just such a vile way, and you know that it's not the truth, but you really are fighting, like I said, we were fighting the government, we were fighting corruption, we were fighting the mass media that was using us as a political football. And a lot of times it would be to lampoon your father. And we're like, this is just a sickening state of events that we're entrapped in. But I have to say, we just admire your father, your family so much, because we knew that we had and I would tell Eddie, I said, I feel like he's so empathetic because he knows what we're going through.
That's right.
He
That's
lives
totally
it
right.
every day. And I felt that in my heart. And I mean, I pray, still pray for your father and your family, because we know what that's like. And it's horrific.
Yeah, it's
then,
not. Sorry, go ahead.
One thing to add on that, with the media, the way they attacked us and the way they attacked your family, I mean, as shameful as it is that they do that, it only makes us stronger. I mean, you guys, we've been around you guys. You guys are a strong family. You rise above it, and that's that's what we learned to do as well. And it just makes you stronger as a family.
It's like building a muscle. The more you work it
Yes.
out, the stronger it gets. They don't realize that. You're right. And maybe one day it will backfire on them. I'm still waiting for that day.
Yes.
We'll wrap up here shortly, but I have to ask you guys, obviously, Eric and I have kids, so I can't imagine what was this like for your family, for your kids, while all of this was happening, seeing, you know, your parents, people you love, splashed across the headlines, knowing that, you know, your dad is locked up and you don't know what's going on. How did this work for your kids? And obviously life doesn't stop. You guys had to just figure it out.
Yeah. It was super stressful for them. You know, they're very strong and resilient children. So they have to be coming up in the naval special warfare community and everything they've been around and seen. But yeah, it was very tough on them. I could never imagine what exactly was going on in their heads or what still goes on in their heads, because it was such a traumatic time. But they pulled through. They remained strong and steadfast, and the reason for that is because they had her as a rock while I was locked up. But I mean, they're tough kids, and we're still, we still deal with repercussions of it, but we're getting through it.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, most of what I'm sure you guys do is what we do. It's like, you have to be strong for your children, and you have to, regardless of what's going on. I had been used to being a naval special warfare spouse. We had let him go. We'd let him deploy. He's been fighting in every major war since 9/11, which it's hard to believe that we're hitting the 20-year mark of that tragic day in our country. And I think that it's easy for people to forget that these guys are still over there. And 20 years later, he's been to Iraq, Afghanistan. And so for our family, we're there because of that. And I think other people are able to move on, but our children are intimately acquainted with loss, with tragedy. They've lost uncles who are, his brothers in arms. We've seen, our good friends widowed, people losing their sons. We were walking through that for the last 20 years. So I have to say, I feel like God really ordained the strength that we had in our marriage, our faith, the resilience of our children. I think it did enable us, something that could have, relatively speaking, crushed us. I do believe that it empowered us to really speak up and speak out for people. And so now we've started a nonprofit. We have a foundation that helps and supports service members, police, first responders, and we are helping them to seek and find justice. So I have to say, although it was a horrific situation, the book will highlight everything we went through. It'll even have chapters from our children, what they experienced, how they felt. So it's definitely something that we're just trying to make the best of. If you can make the best of a situation, I feel like it has more value. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I assume, look, we've sort of talked about it a little bit throughout the interview, but it sounds like you guys decided ultimately to write a book because you had to get your story out. You wanted the truth to come out. You wanted people to hear from you. Is that why you ultimately decided to do this?
Yeah, I wrote the book, or we wrote the book for a couple different reasons. One, just like you said, to get the truth out, because there were so many lies, half-truths, and misinformation put out through the media. The only way to get the truth out was for us to sit down and actually write down everything we went through. And then the other main reason I wanted to write the book was to share just what heroes, my wife, my brother, my children, President Trump, like everybody that was involved, and stepped up and fought against, the media, the Navy, and won. So, I mean, that's huge. And I think people are going to be pretty amazed just how much work my, Andrea and my brother Sean put into, getting the word out and defending me.
Yeah, well, you're very lucky to have had a great team behind you, Eddie. The book is out at the end of June, is that right? And where can people get it?
June 29th, it should be released in stores, and it'll be sold
anywhere books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold, and then we also have it on Amazon or EddieGallagherBook.com.
You can find it there as well, and you can still pre-order it. And then the people that pre-order are getting the book a month in advance, so they will get the truth before anyone else.
Yeah. That's so great. Last and final question. How far do you think I would make it in Navy SEAL training, Eddie? Just first hour out, second hour.
Oh, Laura, I think I give you at least 3 or 4 months.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to take that and run with it as though I did some of the training myself. So
Yeah.
listen, you guys are so great. You're such a great team. You complement each other so well. Love getting to sit down with you guys. Thank you for your time. Thank you again, both of you, for your service to our country. It's not just Eddie. I know, Andrea, when you have a spouse that's in the military, you serve as well. So thank you both for all you've done and continue to do. And we'll look forward to the book. And until next time, Eddie and Andrea Gallagher, thank you for joining us. And to everybody at home, as always, thank you for tuning into The Right View. We'll see you back here next time for more.